Hey everybody, and welcome back once again. Today is June 5th, 2019. In this video, we're going to be talking about a shooting that occurred in Australia yesterday in the city of Darwin in Northern Territory. Now we're going to talk about the possibility that this event is not at all what it was portrayed to us as, and may have actually been an outright hoax altogether. Now, in order to understand what I'm talking about in this video, you need to have a basic understanding of the language of Gematria, the practice of coding numbers into words. The ancient Greek and Hebrew alphabets did not have separate numbers. They used letters from their alphabet to count, and it seems like the English alphabet is very much both a lettering and numbering system. This language is very simple. You start with the alphabetic order, where each letter is numbered 1 through 26 relative to its position in the alphabet. The reduction methods use the rules of numerology to reduce each double-digit number to a single digit. And when you pay attention to this language and how it ties into dates on the calendar, date durations, also date numerologies, seemingly to a slightly lesser extent, you find some pretty alarming alignments. And again, what I'm going to talk about in this video is how these major news events, particularly big shootings, are all occurring by this eclipse crucifixion code taken from the story of Jesus Christ in the New Testament. Most people understand that Jesus was crucified on the cross, and a lot of people believe he was 33 years old. But few people realize that in the Gospels it describes an event that's very similar to a solar eclipse occurring during the crucifixion. And this is the basis of this entire code. Now, before talking about how this event relates to total solar eclipses numerically, we're going to look at a little bit more of the basic numerology involved with this event. So first, we'll look at the date, June 4th. Now, because this happened in Australia, the local population there writes the date as 4/6, as people in most parts of the world do. And 46 is a number I talk about on this channel quite frequently. This is the reduction value of the word sacrifice. In the Hebrew language, the words for kill and murder both sum to 46 in ordinal. Genesis 46, which is the 46th chapter in the Bible, even begins with a sacrifice. Again, this code of letters and numbers based in the Bible. So the shooting was in the city of Darwin. And when most people think about Darwin, they think about Charles Darwin, who was a scientist from the 1800s, who contributed a lot of work to the field of evolution, particularly human evolution, which in large part is a fraud. And this is one of those scientists who is pushed by the mainstream and, because of his beliefs and findings. And keep in mind, a lot of this evolution theory, as how it relates to humans, is a hoax. This traces back to Piltdown Man, who was provided as the missing link between apes and humans. And of course, it was a guy named Charles Dawson, a name not terribly dissimilar from Charles Darwin, who submitted Piltdown Man, claiming it was a real skeleton. And then just in 2016, very recently, it was discovered that this was an outright hoax. But this didn't stop public schools from teaching it for 41 years. In fact, the word Piltdown equals 41 in reduction. So, of course, Charles Darwin, one of these people that's going to be attributed. Well, if you look at the date that Charles Darwin died and how it relates to these people dying in Darwin, notice how he died on the date April 19th of 1882. Well, if you measure from April 18th to June 4th, or 6/4, or 4/6 in Australia, you get 46 days, tying into the sacrifice code. The name of the shooter in this event was Ben Hoffman, who spells his names with both 2 F's and 2 N's. Using the reverse reduction method, this is where Z gets the number 1 and A is 26. As you'll see, A, 2 plus 6 reduces to 8. and that's how this cipher works. Ben Hoffman summing to 46. Not only that, but his name also sums to 199. And 199 is the 46th prime number. So he has the number 46 coded into his name twice. This shooting said to have occurred in the Northern Territory. Notice how Northern Territory also sums to 199 in that same cipher. Furthermore, Ben Hoffman summing to 53 in reduction. This is the value of shooting with the S exception. Northern Territory also with a 107 value, just like the ordinal sum of shooting. There's a couple alignments with the number 34. Northern Territory, Australia equals 340. Darwin, Australia equals 340 in Frank Baconis as well. And this essentially represents the number 34. As again, zeros can be ignored. And another thing I just now realized, look at the gematria of Northern Territory, Australia in our Jewish cipher. This Jewish method is based in the Latin alphabetic order, and it uses the Latin alphabetic order with more modern English characters placed at the end. And it's pretty fascinating that this sums to 1809 in Jewish gematria. Look at the year that Charles Darwin was born in, 1809. Again, further showing how this is a numeric ritual and not at all a real event. But we started off talking about the 34, right? This is the reduction value of murder, which ties into this story, as there were several people murdered in Darwin. The 34th prime number is 139. And this is very important here as well. This is the ordinal value of Freemasonry, the secret society who, at the top levels, is feeding us our mainstream news every day. Darwin, Northern Territory, which is how the city appears on Wikipedia. Notice how this has a reverse value of 139. The name of the shooter even, Hoffman, also with this 139. CNN's follow-up article gave us this headline, which, in the alphabetic order, sums to 1,039. And why is this number being used? Because this story is to remind us about gun control. Australia is a nation with gun control. And notice how this sums to 139 in ordinal. As far as the 49 in reduction, the date numerology of the shooting, 6 plus 4 plus 20 plus 19, sums to 49. So it's pretty clear the stance the media is taking. They want to bring gun control back to the forefront. And that seems to be the standard response now. Anytime we get a shooting, the governor comes out and says that laws will change. And this is something we've just recently seen, ever since the Christchurch shooting. Politicians coming out vowing to change the laws. And this is a dangerous thing. Now, you may be wondering, why would they give us a fake shooting from a nation that already has gun control? Wouldn't that prevent people from turning in their guns if they try to enact it here in the United States? But you have to look at it from the media's point of view and the angle that they're taking. What they're saying is that the weapon used in this shooting, which was a 12-gauge shotgun, may have been stolen as far back as 1997. So what they're essentially saying here is that not enough people turned their weapons in when gun control was enacted, and that there were still too many loose firearms floating around the nation. At least that's how I interpret it. And feel free to correct me, but what really shoves this in our faces is look at the name of the chief minister of the Northern Territory where this news story took place. His name is Michael Gunner. Can you believe this shit? Michael Gunner? That's his name, really? This name summing to 448, just like the full name of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, 448. So now let's talk about how this ties into the eclipse code. Now remember, just this past week, we had the worst shooting in the United States so far this year. It occurred in the community of Princess Anne. And look at how Princess Anne has matching numbers, 4 out of these 5 main ciphers, with the phrase total eclipse. 137, 463, 187, and 70. All of these numbers found in the value of Princess Anne. Charles Darwin died on April 19th, 1882. So if you measure from his death to the date of the death of these people in Darwin, you find it's a span of 137 years and 47 days. And look at the gematria of total eclipse. 137 ordinal, 47 reduction. This, again, happened in the Northern Territory. See how Northern Territory equals 1307, like 137? Furthermore, Northern Territory, Australia, sums to 137. And again, there's the 1809, which is found in Charles Darwin's birth year. In fact, the name Darwin sums to 69, 33, and 39. These are the same numbers as eclipse, 69, 33, and 39. Darwin also sums to 1034. That's interesting because solar eclipse equals 134. So the alignments here are clear. Now the only number not shared is 93. Darwin summing to 93 in reverse. Well, they do tell us that the sun is 93 million miles away. But if you measure from the most recent total solar eclipse, which to this date is still the Great American Eclipse of 2017, measuring from that date to the date of the shooting is 93 weeks. So again, Hebrew Gematria is really the root of this whole code of letters and numbers. Now, in the Hebrew language, the phrase for both total eclipse and solar eclipse both have ordinal values of 83. Darwin, Northern Territory, Australia sums to 431, which is the 83rd prime number. You'll also notice Darwin, Northern Territory, Australia equals 170 and 433. These numbers also relevant. The word moon equals 170, and the moon is what causes a solar eclipse, which sums to 433. Next, I want to look at the gematria of the first article CNN published, and I do pretty much always look at CNN. I always look at the first article that I see, but CNN is the first one I check, so it's almost certain that these other news outlets are coding their headlines similarly. But to point out CNN's first one, which I believe was the one I put up on the top of my blog post, 4 killed in mass shooting in Northern Australia. Check out the reduction values. First, we'll start with 208. This is the same as Darwin, Northern Territory, Australia, which we just looked at. It's the only other number in the base methods, 208. And if you measure from the date of the shooting to the next total solar eclipse, which falls on July 2nd, it's exactly 28 days before. In the Hebrew language, total solar eclipse has a gematria value of 280. Now, in Greek ordinal, total eclipse of the sun sums to 260. And there are a couple of numbers of ways to write this phrase out, so let's not put too much significance on the 260, but CNN's headline did give us that 260 in the reverse order. 260 also the ordinal value of Northern Territory, 260. The other thing I look at in all of my videos about these major false flag events, and again, the term false flag equals 69 and 33, just like Darwin, 69-33, just like eclipse. All of these events related to eclipses. False flag sums to 156 in Jewish Gematria. And this is significant because in Hebrew, the word for eclipse on its own has a value of 156. And this is because eclipses occur 1, 5, or 6 lunar phases apart from one another. So, false flags related to eclipses also related to the dates that local politicians took office. Now, a big theme of this shooting, as you'll see in the CNN article, is the 1996 Port Arthur massacre. This event occurred in April of 1996 and is this event that is virtually single-handedly responsible for removing gun rights in Australia. This event occurred just a month after the Dunblane massacre, which had guns effectively removed in the United Kingdom. Both the United Kingdom and Australia, of course, ruled by the same monarchy. And what's interesting about the Port Arthur shooting, it began on April 28th of 1996. Because 1996 was a leap year, this was the 119th day of the year. This brings us to the Prime Minister of Australia, this man, Scott Morrison. Look at the date that he took office, August 24th of 2018. Measuring from the date he took office to the date of the shooting was 9 months and 11 days. Furthermore, this shooting was 11 months and 9 days before his May 13th birthday. And why are we getting two 119 sequences? Well, in English Extended Gematria, the cipher on the left side of your screen, which uses the current 26-letter alphabet, the name Scott John Morrison sums to 1,190. Also notice the 1,470, 147, the value of conspiracy, Freemason 147, numerical 147, knowledge 147. Anyway, the Port Arthur massacre began on a date with 147 numerology. But think about the date. April 28th, as it's written in Australia, is 28/4. And if you measure from the date that he took office to the date of the shooting, it was 284 days, which brings us right back to the date of the Port Arthur massacre. So all of these events, all of these shootings, very finely crafted together. The other way you can measure this, we looked at the months and days, we looked at the days. What about the weeks and days? Here we have 40 weeks and 4 days. This represents the number 44, which is the reduction value of shooting. And again, this shooting, which sums to 107, was in the Northern Territory, 107. And this eclipse crucifixion code is nothing new at all. A couple more things I wanted to mention about the 119. This 119911 number, a very important number in false flags. I pointed out how false flag equals 156. Well, the 156th prime number is 9/11. And of course, the biggest terror attack in United States history occurred on the date 9/11. We had a shooting on April 30th earlier this year in Charlotte, at UNC Charlotte. That was 119 days after the governor, whose name sums to 119, took office. We also had a shooting in Colorado at a STEM school. That shooting was also 119 days after their governor took office in Colorado. And the city in that shooting sums to 119. 119 is the reduction value of Fraternal Order of Police, who would no doubt be in charge of these events, assuming, of course, they are all actually hoaxes. But again, this eclipse code, nothing new, and something that was definitely in play during the Port Arthur massacre. Notice how on this page about crucifixion darkness, they show us a painting from 1870. And a lot of people recognize the number 187 as the homicide code. That's slang. It comes from rap songs, but really it's the penal code in California. 187 is murder. Total eclipse sums to 187 in the reverse alphabetic order. And on the date of the Port Arthur massacre, notice how it was 187 days after the most recent and nearest total solar eclipse. That occurred on October 24th of 1995. And there you see the 187 days. By the way, 187 days is also 6 months, 4 days. Yesterday's shooting occurred on the date 6/4. The Port Arthur massacre was also, I think, 6 weeks and 4 days after the Dunblane massacre. And I believe this is significant as well, the 64. And I'm just thinking on the fly here, but it makes a lot of sense. The 64th prime number is 311. And someone I did not talk about in this video is the Governor General of Australia. I mentioned the Prime Minister, but there's also this guy, Sir Peter John Cosgrove. Well, if you measure from his birthday, which is July 28th, to the date of the shooting, you'll find he was exactly 311 days after his birthday. Notice how he was sworn into office on March 28th. March 28th falls 69 days before the shooting in Darwin, which sums to 69. So that does it for my blog post on this event. And again, I use the term event because I don't believe that what they told us happened really did happen. It definitely seems like there is a global race to remove the weapons from the people of this country and ultimately the world as our government travels to a new world order. And always remember, the word government comes from Latin. Govern, coming from the word gubernare. Think about how governors are selected in gubernatorial elections. Well, gubernare means to control, and the suffix ment means of the mind. So government literally means mind control. Plus, it also has the numeric value of 137. The phrase mind control equals 137. Don't forget, 137 is the 33rd prime number. 33, really the favorite number, it seems to be, of these gangs that are running our governments. Sergeant Renegade, I'm kind of tired of your comments, dude. Definitely removing these. I mean, you're telling me life is more than numbers. This is removing me from God? Okay, buddy. I thought I was the crazy one talking about numbers in here. I don't even know how to... Whatever. So I'm sharing this work because nobody else is really picking apart the Eclipse Crucifixion Code, which is painfully obvious. All of these events measure up perfectly to solar eclipses when you look at the location of these events. Just never seems to fail. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this video. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe, not because I want the subs, but because this content has faced censorship. And the only way for this type of knowledge to gain traction is for those who are watching it to help spread it to those who they feel might have a set of open eyes and are looking for a little more truth in this world than what they're offered through the mainstream media. All right, everyone. Peace, love, and God bless. We'll talk to you next time. Adios.